Call the meeting to order, please. Everyone, we're going to call the meeting to order. I need the gavel, I guess. First time I need the gavel. Where is it? All right, are you ready?
Ready.
All right, all, we're going to call the meeting to order. I'm going to call the New Hartford Public Schools Board of Education regular meeting, 7 p.m. on Tuesday, May 6th, to order at 7:02 p.m. Order of business, I have no changes to the order. I'm sorry, I forgot the, let me start with item A, Pledge of Allegiance. If you are able, please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I wrote next one. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, my apologies for skipping past that. The next item on the agenda is the order of business. I have no changes to the order of business, although I think in our packets was an old agenda. There was a revision made to this. So under the superintendent's report, we have a second item. Do you have the most current one?
Update on 25-26 New Hartford Public School budget reductions, instructional assistant and clerical aid.
For the agenda items, I don't have any additions to the agenda. Does anybody have anything they'd like to consider adding to the agenda for tonight? All right, seeing none, the order of business will stay as it stands. Next item is communication to the Board of Education. Since our previous meeting, I do not believe I've seen any additional communication. So the next item is public comment. Would anybody like to address the board?
Christine Mangini, 33 Red Clover Road. I just want to express my sincere thanks and gratitude for each member of the Board of Education. I felt that Mr. Sousa and the board showed their best intentions, and most importantly for the students and of course our staff. I felt that you heard the community's concerns and acted on it. And as a teacher, I felt really supported by this board. I'm thankful for each of you who have dedicated your time for this position. And I know that budget time is grueling. And I was very disappointed that the Board of Finance wasn't supportive to you. So I feel I'm very upset about that. So again, I just wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart for supporting us, because I felt it, and I think the rest of the community felt that you wanted the best for each of us, for the students, for our schools, for our teachers and staff. So thank you.
Anyone else? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to our superintendent's report. Superintendent Sousa.
All right. Good evening, everybody. So happy to have everybody with us today, especially our student representatives. Welcome back to both Dexter and to Emma. I'm going to turn it over to them because I know that they've been working very hard with Dr. Carroll and the Antolini students to provide a presentation. So I'll turn it over to both of you.
So before we start, I just want to tell you that I'm super impressed with Emma and Dexter. They have created a slide deck, which is something new. Our student reps have never done that before. And I'd also like to say thank you to Mrs. Newman, who is our cafeteria manager, for providing the food that you have in front of you, which Dexter and Emma will talk about. Okay. Do you want to come right up in front? You got to talk into the mic.
What's for lunch in New Hartford Public Schools? Board of Ed presentation 5/6/25 by Emma Jack and Dexter Ceruto.
Good evening. We are going to show you where some of our lunch foods come from. All of the pictures you are about to see are actually from our school cafeterias.
The acorn squash was grown at Daffodil Hill Growers in Southbury. The green oak leaf lettuce from Food for Thought is hydroponically, which means water grown, in Torrington. This lettuce is free from GMOs and pesticides and is sustainably grown in an eco-friendly state-of-the-art greenhouse.
A rainbow tray is a tray with fruit and vegetables. We call these rainbow trays because they have different fruits and vegetables that are all different colors. We have these every day. What I love about these is that you get different options such as apples, applesauce, strawberries, oranges, pineapple, bananas, and avocados. For veggies, we have grape tomatoes, carrots, hummus, green beans, and cucumbers.
One day we had a taste test in all 3 of our school cafeterias. This taste test was very successful. We were able to try all different types of foods like beets, rainbow carrots, and different kinds of turnips and green and purple radishes. We also tried watermelon radishes. Emma liked the beets, but her teeth were stained purple.
Everyone got to try apple crisp made with apples from March Farm. It was really good. What you have in front of you is also the apple crisp.
Organic sweet baby potatoes from Oxen Hill Farm in Soulsfield. These are organic baby sweet potatoes from Oxen Hill Farm in Soulsfield. Mrs. Newman let everyone try these vegetables to see if they can guess what it was. Some kids thought it was carrot or pumpkin, but it was sweet potato. I thought it tasted like Thanksgiving dinner. My favorite part personally was the pink spoons that they gave out.
These are examples of what our fruit and vegetables look like. These were actually taken in our Antolini school cafeteria. My favorite lunch is crispy chicken nuggets with a warm, soft pretzel.
My favorite samples this year were the watermelon radishes, the rainbow carrots, and the baby sweet potatoes. The watermelon radishes were very sweet and fresh.
The winners of the survey.
We sent a survey to all students in our schools to choose a new menu item. The choices were caprese panini, charcuterie box, chicken fillets, and backyard barbecue salad, beef taco, or chicken Caesar salad.
The winners of the survey were taco salad and charcuterie box. These items have been added to the menu this month. Dexter and I got to sample these new lunches. The food was really good. Everything tasted very fresh.
My favorite part about the meal was the salsa and chips. The lettuce was also very good because it was refreshing before recess. Thank you.
What an outstanding presentation. Thank you so much, Emma and Dexter. Very impressed with your work. And thank you for sharing some of the foods that we are experiencing here in New Hartford with all of the local produce that, I only knew a little bit of. I felt like I had another whole other education this evening. So thank you so much for your preparation and for sharing that with the board and with the community. Both of you, thank you. And I understand we have samples before us. So this is the apple crisp. And then, yeah, in here, okay. Carrots and just carrot sticks, right? And microgreens, so you're educating me tonight. And apple slices, any particular apple slices or carrots or just? Thank you so much, Mrs. Newman. Just say, Superintendent, read the paper, sir. Okay, so the apples are from Rogers Orchard, Southington microgreens from Vibrant Farm, and Bantam carrots Daffodil Hill Growers in Southbury. Outstanding. Excellent. Thank you so much for all of your presentation work. And thank you so much, Mrs. Newman and Dr. Carroll and all of the Antolini staff. Much appreciated. Thank you. As we continue honoring our students, thank you, student representatives. This evening, I was almost late to the Board of Education meeting tonight because we were also celebrating our Litchfield County Superintendent Award recipients. They will be with us at the next Board of Education meeting to give them time to come to the meeting, and we'll honor them. But I wanted to announce that both Tyler Bouchard and Olivia Pratt were the distinct recipients of the Superintendent's Award for Leadership, and they were selected by the staff here at Antolini School. So congratulations to them and to their families. If you don't know Tyler, let me tell you a little bit about Tyler now. Tyler is funny, curious, and a hard worker. He gets a sense of humor from his papa. His favorite subjects at school are social studies and math. Tyler is an athlete who plays basketball, soccer, and baseball for New Hartford teams. Tyler likes to travel and has been to Orlando, Cape Cod, and Texas. In his free time, he likes to play video games and hopes that one day he will go viral on YouTube. During the summers, he really enjoys boating on West Hill Lake. If you don't know Olivia Pratt, let me tell you a little bit about her. Olivia is athletic, kind, and social. She is smart and loves a good challenge. Her favorite subject at school is social studies because she loves to learn about history. Olivia really enjoys sports. She is busy all the time with Torrington Pal basketball, FSC Premier Soccer, and New Hartford recreational softball. She also skis and is a dancer. She hopes to go to Miss Porter's for high school and then to head to college to study something that she loves, TBD. In her spare time, she creates woodworking projects with her grandpa. So congratulations again to Tyler and Olivia, and we will see them here at our next board meeting in June so we can celebrate them in person. All right, continuing on with more staff updates and district news. It gives me great pleasure this evening, but it's very bittersweet, as we've announced before, to celebrate and honor our executive assistant to the superintendent at central office, the ringleader at central office, if you will, Mrs. Janet Terenzi. And we've invited her here to the board. We're going to present her with a token of appreciation on behalf of the Board of Education and all of New Hartford Public School staff members, students, and our community. But I want to read this first, and I'm going to get through this, promise. Janet Terenzi has dedicated more than 20 years of service to the New Hartford Public Schools, and it is with a bittersweet heart that I share her decision to retire. I'm excited for Janet to begin this new season in her life and like to publicly thank her for her devotion and loyalty to the New Hartford Public Schools for 20 years. Janet will be leaving a huge institutional void as she leaves. It just simply cannot be replaced. We will do our absolute best to do so. But I still have her phone number. She has been an invaluable asset to our families, to students and staff, and her contributions have ensured the daily operations and success of our district on a daily basis for so many years. On a personal note, I have to fully credit Janet with my transition here. She answered, I can't even count how many questions. She didn't tell me one time, you're just annoying, Jeff. Not once. She's been wonderful. She knows the history of New Hartford Public Schools inside and out. And I don't know how, but we'll try to figure out how to move forward without her. Her last day is on June the 6th. So Janet, please come on up so we could present you with the Plaque of Service Award for 20 years. Yeah, don't trip on it. Not now, not now. Here you are. And if the board, if you would indulge me, can we please get a picture surrounded? Yep.
Thank you very much.
Of course, my love. I don't want to. Congratulations. Board, can you guys join me here? And then thank you. Audience member, Dr. Carroll, can you get a picture? Thank you.
I'll see you out west.
Yeah, out west, absolutely.
Around there? Around there?
Going around back.
Perfect, yeah.
Sure, keep you
Sure, people in front. Thank you, Dr. Carroll.
I'll send it to Tom. Ready?
Outstanding. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
again,
Thank
Tim.
you.
Derek, thank you very much. Kristen, thank you. Did I miss anybody? No. Oh, I missed.
Oh,
Big shocker.
yeah, that's exactly. Wonderful. All right, with more staff update news, also bittersweet, our longtime nurse of Bakerville School, Mrs. Marie Kitch, has announced her retirement after 24 years of service as well. We will honor her at our next Board of Education meeting. We will formally present her with a plaque of service. Again, another bittersweet institutional knowledge individual who's been here taking care of not just cuts and bruises, but also our hearts and our minds, and being a presence of comfort and love. So we will miss her tremendously as well, and we'll make sure that we honor her at the next Board of Education meeting. All right, shifting gears a little bit more over to other superintendent report updates. Number one, as a update to CJR, I'd like to give Mike Lynch a tremendous amount of credit for this effort. CJR has the ability to continue their work with our students here at our schools at absolutely no cost. We will not have that individual as a mental health support for our public school students on a day-to-day basis, but the caseload that individual currently has will continue, which is outstanding for the families and the students that are in dire need of that service. That will continue to take place right here at our schools throughout the summer and over the course of the year. Great job, Mike Lynch. Thank you so much, sir. All right. Moving on to more information to share with the Board of Education. The next up is an update on the central office staffing. I've continued to evaluate, and I could report to the board that at this time it is not feasible. I'm going to continue to attain additional counsel for the position that was motioned to explore. That is the position of the executive assistant to the superintendent and also the administrative assistant to the director of student services. So that, like I mentioned before, is a very complex process. The job descriptions are extremely different, and one is negotiated work through a union, so that work belongs to the union. The other is an at-will employee. So I will continue to seek counsel on that and look to give more updates in the month of June to the Board of Education. Up next, the update to the 25-26 New Hartford Public Schools budget reductions, the specific positions of instructional assistant and clerical aide. Again, this is a very lean budget with no other room for contingencies as we've met over the course of the year. It was echoed publicly. The Board of Education had absolutely done the right thing in utilizing funds from our non-lapsing account. I have met with the individuals that are scheduled to be reduced in force, and outside any other foreseen developments, that is what will stand. Outside of anything that develops either tonight with the budget process and referendum or anything else that is unforeseen, but as of this time, those positions are reduced. Last on the superintendent's report is pre-K. So with some of our information that we've shared with the board, that next year we will be absolutely hiring another kindergarten teacher because we'll have a tremendous amount of births. There are currently 66 recorded births at the town clerk's office. So in a strategic move by the board, what we're going to do is we are opening another pre-K section because we have so many students that are on a wait list, and that is a strategic move so we don't permit those students to then go on to a magnet school and then be left with tuition bills or other things in the kindergarten and on years. If you've been on the board for a minute, you know how passionate I am about New Hartford Public Schools, that we offer the absolute best education. Magnet schools, all respect to you, you just don't compete with us. So with this move, it is going to be cost neutral because it is a tuition-based program. It also allows us the ability to have an individual for more than 1 year instead of it being a one-year position, so it's more attractive to hire. And we will obviously make a strategic hire as well, looking for an individual who is newer to the profession for cost efficiencies. But I wanted to report that also to the Board of Education. Make sure I've got everything here. Oh, and last update here is on the K-8 Curriculum Council. So we have met for the final time this year. Subcommittee work will be worked on next year. That's our agenda. The Curriculum Council is very large. It encompasses all of our surrounding regional districts, I should say. That's Heartland now is inclusive, Colebrook, Norfolk, New Hartford, and Barkhamsted, in addition to Region 7. So it's a K-8 council. We are working with the middle school administrative staff to schedule instructional rounds, but also to really see where we want students to land in 7th and 8th grade, to have expectations set and then work backwards in design. We're going to be looking to develop grade level teams that are going to meet regionally. We're going to work on a professional development schedule with our administration so that we can get that underway, and our PDAC committee as well, which is a very important cog in the work that we do for our professional development. But as a region, we are, again, resurrecting the Curriculum Council and looking to do great work to share professional skills, talents, resources within our region. So we're working smarter. Those are all of my reports for the superintendent's report. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Superintendent Sousa. For the board, is there any questions, clarifications you'd like on Jeff's superintendent report?
No, just curious, the CGR, did they get funding from some other source?
So they can continue to be funded through the health insurance of the students' parents or families. So that's how that is going to work.
Is there any additional risk there down the line, like that we are aware of in terms of how long that funding source will be available?
We'll revisit it like we do typically contracts on a year-to-year basis, and Mike will lead that. Oh my goodness, I almost forgot. My apologies to all the beautiful and wonderful mothers listening and that are in the audience. Happy Mother's Day coming up, and also Happy Memorial Day later in the year, but more importantly, Happy Mother's Day.
What?
Mothers have to plan Mother's Day, so like I'm just letting her know we're planning this.
Every day. Really? Every day.
I had one more question. Will we see the student reps again for one more meeting?
I believe they should be here for June. I'm seeing a nod. Yes, we are scheduled to have them here. So yes, and
Okay.
as well as our LCSA students that will be here for next month.
Yeah,
June
'cause I
3rd.
want to say something to them before that, it's over.
Got it. Got it.
Thanks.
Yep, of course.
I'm gonna get them a t-shirt from high school. Very nice.
We're good? All right, we're going to move on to the Board of Education Chair's report. I have very limited. Again, I do look at Frank's shirt. It says I have voted, so voting closes in about 36 minutes. So if you haven't voted and you'd like to, and you're here, please go down the street and vote. All right. Moving on to the next item, routine business. We have a few items underneath this agenda item. The first is minutes. We have the minutes from March 11th, 2025, March 18th, 2025, April 3rd, 2025, and April 10, 2025. All those were in your meeting packet for tonight. Can I get a motion to approve? Motion by Tom. Could I get a second? Second by Deirdre. Is there any discussion, revisions, or adjustments that need to be made to any of those meeting minutes?
Did you verify all of the numbers in there? Because I lost track.
Which numbers specifically?
Literally all of the different, yes, you're saying yes, okay. All of
The
the different
amount.
iterations of the budget, the numbers
yeah.
and the percentages, and I did not
Yeah.
keep a running tally.
There was a quick change in one of them, but
Yeah.
it was amended before it went out. Any further discussion on the meeting minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. That is unanimous. All right, next item is the expenditure report. That was also in your meeting packet. We'll start with a motion to approve. Motion by Tom. Can I get a second? Second by Frank. Is there any discussion on the expenditure report?
I had a question regarding your projections for the budget as it stands. I noticed there's a lot of, obviously there's some unencumbered money there, but what's your anticipated bottom line
Yep.
coming out or coming towards the end?
Yep. We just recently unfroze the budget so that we feel like we're in a comfortable place. Our projections are much closer than to the zero mark than they were based on the budget freeze and other reductions that we have made. So we're looking at it still on a weekly basis as a central office staff, but we should be closer to zero versus the $55,000 that we were originally projecting. So based on those measures, additionally, we feel like we're in a better place. Again, on a day-to-day basis, An unanticipated special education cost came off the book to help with that as one example. But there were other areas that we were able to reduce as well, which is very, very helpful. So great testament to all of the team that's here administratively and central office staff, keeping a weekly eye on it and working diligently.
Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. That is unanimous as well. Jeff, there's an item personnel report. Did you have something else to report?
No, I blended it all in together.
I thought so.
Yeah.
So personnel report was taken under the superintendent's report. Okay, moving on to tonight's new business. The first is to explore reductions to operational costs for the 26-27 school year. This was an item that was requested by a board member to be added. So I'm going to open the floor for discussion on this. Really, this is just, again, open up a discussion. There's no motions or actions, to my knowledge, that are going to be taken tonight on this, but
I'll take the floor.
please.
I'm going to read something just so I keep my thoughts organized. So I requested that we add this agenda item to today's meeting to just kick off a discussion outside of an in-year budget process for us to take a serious look at long-term budget needs. From my experience as both a town resident and as a member of the Board of Ed, I've observed that discussions regarding spending are often limited to action items revolving around the next year's budget, which limits the opportunity we have to have impactful conversations around long-term solutions. The real work that needs to be done is about reducing our operational costs with a considered strategy over a longer period of time. Everyone feels the frustration of budget cuts, and there are no easy answers. My goal today is to have a frank discussion where we come up with a plan to make a considered proposal to reduce the district's operational expenses to help curb increasing costs in ways that we can control. I would hope that we could spend some time this calendar year identifying opportunities and putting together a plan to reduce those costs, even if those savings cannot be realized in the next year or so. The simplest suggestion here seems to be reevaluating the number of schools we wish to operate in the district. I do recognize that the town has already gone through a discussion on this 8 or 9 years ago, and that even some current members of the board were not in favor of this approach. I'm not saying that it's the only way, but our resources to investigate and to implement other options are limited and also potentially costly. To me, my main priority is the services and opportunities that children will have as a part of our school district. My own 2 children are just beginning to enter the school system this fall, and as Bakerville residents, I expected them to be enrolled in Bakerville School. So I'm talking about my own family making these trade-offs as well. The things that I'm considering when I put forth this suggestion are the following. Capital expenditures to maintain and support 3 buildings are high. The cost of materials, emergency repairs, and necessary remediation are only going to continue to climb over the next couple of years. The upcoming necessary upgrades required for all of the boiling tanks for all 3 schools, currently quoted at $250,000 each, all to be done within the next 5 to 7 years, are going to be a burden to get through and will only cut into our operating expenses further. This gives me severe heartburn. There is also a cost to sharing resources across multiple buildings that could be reduced with less back and forth between the 2 schools. Even human resources who might be required to travel between buildings during the day creates inefficiencies within resource deployment throughout the day. During the discussions around various support staff roles, a common theme kept occurring. When this person is out, this other person steps in to do the work, and they know how to do it. Planning for this kind of redundant coverage is critical and may be reduced by having fewer buildings with unique operating rhythms to support. School security is top of mind for many of our constituents. Having enough staff to ensure security protocols are properly being followed and that there is always coverage to monitor coming and going from the school is also an important element of operating costs. The staff and equipment necessary to secure 2 buildings will be a lower cost basis than 3 buildings. There have been other suggestions to reduce operational expenses, including thoughts around pursuing regionalization with other Northwest Regional 7 towns to reduce costs on curriculum administration and so on. While that might be a road we go down eventually, I think that the level of effort to get there would be much larger than what we can control in our own town, and I'm concerned that rising costs will force our hand on critical student programming and services support until a scheme like that could be finalized and actually implemented. Other board members have suggested finding sponsors or advertisers or volunteers that could cover the costs and efforts with some programming and communication, but I'm leery about selling access to our community members as a method for solving this problem, or even trying to expand a volunteer program even though because civic volunteers have been increasingly difficult to source and rely on, as evidenced in our own town with challenges to staffing volunteer emergency services and finding residents to participate in local boards and communities. We'd also need to find dedicated staff resources to manage a larger volunteer service. Tonight, I'd like to discuss what actions we, the Board of Education, would like to take regarding this matter. One possibility is setting a reasonable deadline for a proposal on a path forward to maintain or ideally reduced operating costs from the 25-26 year baseline, ideally starting with next year's budget. But if not, at minimum, I would request those budgets should be impacting the 27-28 school year budget. I propose these longer deadlines in the spirit of providing time to build confidence across our community of stakeholders that the decisions we're making regarding the trade-offs we will inevitably face are the right ones. I think that's it. That's it. I can make a, do I need to make a formal motion on that? Okay.
No, I think right now it's, I mean, I would, you're more than welcome to make a
Yeah.
motion, but, I think the start of it is what you just brought to the table, and I think the start of it is a discussion here. And if we can get ourselves to agree on an action plan, then we can, look into that. But again, you're more than welcome to make any motion you want and where you want to go. But, I think I'd like to open it up to the rest of the board to get any additional thoughts anybody else might have on a lot that you just said.
Sorry, I can email that out to everybody
That's okay.
too,
No.
or try to summarize it
Yeah.
more briefly.
Anybody have any thoughts immediately, as you think about this? This isn't a new topic, right? It's something that's been brought up before. It's a topic that some of us on the board, some of us in the room have lived through. Any thoughts?
What year was it? Do you know what year it was when Bakerville?
10 years ago.
It was 10 years ago,
10 years.
2015. Was there a study done?
There
Yeah,
was.
it's studied right here. It's about as useless as this piece of paper it's on.
So it's
No, I
probably-
mean a study.
I'm being serious. I
Yeah.
mean,
No, was there any study done on cost savings or anything like that done
So-
10 years ago?
there was, from what I'm just going to go off my recollection, there was a bunch of numbers thrown. Pardon me? Yeah. There was a bunch of numbers thrown around from the Board of Ed that year. You close the school, you're going to save $192,000 was the number, right? $192,000 for closing an entire school. That didn't consider the fact that what are you going to do with the building? It's a town building. It's owned by the town. It's maintained by us, but it's got a use somewhere. But in order to demo that building or get rid of it, there's some asbestos behind the walls that doesn't impact the use of the building now. But if you were going to demo it, it would have to be addressed at a substantial cost. It's also the most populous school of the K through 2. There's more kids there than there are downtown, just by the way the town's laid out in our district up here versus the downtown. It's just a different group of constituents, right? So that school is always the one picked on, and I'll use that word loosely, to get closed, whereas it's also the most utilized school. So, to me, that's maybe that's misdirected. And then we're also, again, I know I'm monopolizing your question, I apologize, but, looking at the 10-year averages, the 10-year average of students is only down 10 from that year they did the study. And the study predicted it was going to be down to 305. That was going to be but it's at 428. So.
Was there any talk when that happened? Was anybody on the board? 10 years
Nobody's,
ago?
Kent Penny was on the board.
Did anybody look at New Hartford Elementary as an option? This school obviously is so big, it has to stay open, but anybody look at New Hartford Elementary as an option to close? Or was it just Bakerville?
At the time, there was still a bond on the roof or some portion of the New Hartford New Hartford school that didn't allow it to be closed. There was a financial issue with actually looking at that building for even consideration. Again, I'm just going from my memory. I heavily involved with it. So Bakerville was the target again, you know, because it's the older school, it's got the portables in there that are, you know, past their expected lifespan, but they're in good shape. They're past their expected lifespan. And again, it's got more students in it than downtown. So it wasn't really, the New Hartford Elementary School wasn't the considered target of any kind of consolidation effort.
From what I remember too, it had something to do with the sprinkler system in the Bakerville school, not being up to standards or up to par. Was that one of the issues? Why they wanted to close Bakerville as opposed to New Hartford?
It was one of the discussion topics. Yeah.
I think it would be good to just come up with some questions like, I mean, I'm coming up with these off the top of my head, but do we have enough space in 2 schools to house the whole student population? That's a very practical question you have to ask.
Mhm.
That's answerable, right? And maybe come up with some questions. You know, I was not really invested in that. I remember when the Bakerville thing happened, but because of the age of my kids at the time and stuff like that, I didn't get really engaged in it. I know it caused a lot of heat in the town, but I was on the periphery of that.
Jeff, how much is enrollment down since that happened? What are the numbers? What
I
did you say it was?
think Tom just shared only 10 students on average.
Across the district, across the
I
3 schools?
believe so, yeah.
It's only down for
Since I've been
10?
here, the average is 430 for the past 3 going on 4 years, but Tom has additional information that's demonstrating enrollment prior to
Across all 3 schools, or across all, yeah.
all 3.
Yeah, so the year they did the study, there was 443 students enrolled, the year they did the study, and now last year was 428. So that's 15 students down over 10 years. And then looking at Jeff's projection of 66 birth certificates, that's liable to go above that 443 at this point. So declining enrollment, to me, is not really an issue. It's, if you want to talk about cost, that's obviously an issue. But as far as declining enrollment, yeah, it's down from 15, 20 years ago, but the whole country is down 15 from 15, 20. No one's having kids like they used to, right? So it's a convenience item, convenience at this point, whether you want 3 schools or 2 schools, you know. People in this side of town who, to your point, your children are going to have to get bused down to New Hartford. And that's a consideration that the parents had to take into during that time period, whether they wanted to, you know, that was a big issue with, you know, the little kids, K, 1, 2 on a bus for 35, 40 minutes because of the fact that New Hartford is a very aerial.
I live like a quarter mile from Bakerville School, but I did check the bus routes this year, and if my son was on the bus, he'd be on the bus, like one way or another, regardless. So
Right. And that's a
it's not
consideration.
a huge thing. I want to be very clear that I'm not like advocating for one particular school versus another. The reason that I brought this up is because it's a consistent theme that people keep talking about, and I understand that there's a lot of different implications here, and I don't know that it's the right path forward. That's why I wanted to like leave the discussion open to say what other options are on the table that would accommodate some of those things that I was hearing regarding the duplicative staff. Again, I understand there's cost with closing down any school or like turning over to the town, but we have $250,000 per school cost coming up over the next 5 to 7 years. So like that to me is a factor in this. Like if we can, something like that needs to be taken into account here. So if I don't have a skin in the game in terms of like one particular school, if Bakerville wasn't the right choice, and that's something that we should look at, but I'm also very cognizant of a conversation or like a point that you brought up probably 1 or 2 meetings ago regarding like, we don't have the money to pay an additional consultant to go out and like do due diligence across all of these different factors for us. So like, I don't know who's going to be able to do that work to help us come up with another solution that's targeting that big of a chunk of the budget. And to me, again, what we're doing right now is we're trying to figure out how to deploy the funds that we have available, that the town is willing to grant us in a way that helps us support our mission. I care more about what my children's experience in the building is going to be in terms of having the right people there, having the right programming in places for whatever their needs are versus what building they're in. And that's why this seems like a logical next step for me.
I think one thing for sure is that the Board of Ed can't unilaterally make that decision. right? As you know, you voted today for the town budget and Board of Ed local together. As Tom was saying, back when this came up 10 years ago, there wasn't a large savings. There wasn't a use for the building that they were going to close. That created a lot of angst. I would think that to do this the right way, it has to be a collective discussion with the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen to truly understand, is there a use? I know our first selectman has mentioned the idea behind the want for a senior center. Is that the right location? Is that what the town wants? I don't know the answer. We talk a lot about downtown versus the south side of town, right? Do they want a senior center on the south side of town? Again, I don't know, right? And I'm not going to speculate what they want or what the town wants. To look at it is, and again, I guess I would propose that we talk about a potential task force, right? With members from this board, if someone was willing to volunteer, and the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen. I don't believe that it's going to be free. I believe we're going to have to bring professionals in to measure the use of our space and how best to utilize this school if we move students to this school, for instance. Again, what do we do with Oak Hill, right? Who's using space within our schools? Is there opportunity to move them over to Beck? Right? Again, there's a lot of things that could be thrown out and strategized and weighed. But at the end of the day, is it the right thing for the town? Are we really are we going to see some large savings, or are we going to pay the same or maybe slightly less and pick up a senior center? I don't know. Is that what the town wants, right? So I think there's a lot of discussions that have to happen. I don't think, I know for a fact we're not solving it tonight. Yeah. And I know for a fact that we can't solve it as our own Board of Education, right?
A lot of the savings would be capital savings, wouldn't they? The stuff she's talking about with the oil.
Well, the
tanks and
upkeep,
stuff
but
like
again,
that.
it's still our building. So what do you do with the building? Right? Do you try to sell it? Does anybody want it? Right? At the end of the day, it's still going to need the oil tanks. Right? New Hartford Elementary School is still going to need a roof. Right? So the capital expenditure for the town is still there. It still exists.
It doesn't come out of, a lot of that savings would not be savings in our budget though, right? It would be in,
You're just moving it from one hand to another. Right?
right?
That's kind of, we talk about that often, right? Is it, again, it's an asset that we maintain, that we take care of under our budget. But if we were to give it up back to the town owns the building. Now the town has those costs and those liabilities that they have to cover. Still tax dollars to all of us.
Jeff, could you speak of the grant for the roof?
It's on the agenda. It's the next time.
No, I meant as far as this discussion goes, you were to transfer the ownership of that building out of the school district into the town's hands first. Would there be a grant for the roof, or that would go away? Because it's an educational.
Right. So for educational renovations, there's a DAS, Department, of Administrative Services grant that's given by the state. I'm pretty sure, just as any grant, if you do not follow the conditions set forth in agreement, such as this building will be utilized for a school for the next 20 to 30 years, they're probably going to say there's going to be a penalty, or you have to repay the grant money that you utilized to put the roof on, almost 100%. I could further research that, but with most grants, that's the way it works. You violate the terms of the grant, there's a penalty, or you're repaying those funds. So yeah, that's what I would assume.
An alternative, if the closure of a particular building is too complicated or not timely enough, like an alternative approach before putting together a cross-board, like cross-functional task force, sorry, I couldn't remember that. If we believe that there's opportunity for us to just do this within our own budget, then that is a better place for us to start in terms of a more shorter-term risk. What is the task force within the Board of Ed to reduce our operational costs without closing the school or unleasing any of that? I'm not sure that those opportunities exist within our budget, but if it's worth it for us to, again, think more strategically about, hey, if this was our goal for the next 3 to 5 years in terms of keeping our operational costs at a minimum, or at least not keeping it as a percentage of the budget, whatever that is, trying to flatten that out. is there enough room in there to accommodate the rising costs that we can't control? I don't know the answer to that. I think that we kind of circle around this in every sort of like budget process, and like, I don't feel like anybody's particularly like satisfied with the answers. And I don't mean that in like as a knock on anybody. I just feel like it's like, can we do this? No, we can't do this. Can we do this? No, we can't do this. No, we could do this, but it's going to take like X, Y, and Z. And like, so actually sitting down as a smaller committee and like working through those items and seeing what we could accomplish potentially within our budget, again, outside of the budget process season, so we have time to like think of all the contingencies, is another thing that we could do that doesn't involve closing a school right now. And if we do that work and it's not enough, and we are worried still that next year we're going to come to budget season, the costs that we cannot control are too out of control. And once again, band, tag, everything else that everybody has stood up here fighting for, mental support services, are back on the chopping block, then what are we doing?
I can understand where you're coming from. My opinion is, through the budget process, we've done what you described,
Mhm.
right? Again, we have every opportunity to ask all the clarifying questions and to understand where all of our dollars are going to through that process. And I think, in my opinion, this board has done a great job in the last 2 years doing that. So I don't, again, knowing what I know about our budget, there aren't some rocks that haven't been uncovered
Yep.
that have a pot of gold underneath them,
Yep.
right? To be able to do, I think, what you're describing. So, I mean, I would propose, and I mean, if the board wanted us to follow it, I think between Superintendent Seuss and I, we can start the conversations with the other boards
Mhm.
and have a discussion. If they would like to create this task force to start having some real conversations about what do we do as a town, right? As a cross-functional task force, how do we as a town, right, continue to provide the educational system that we have, right? And you're right, it's not within the walls, right? The walls don't make the educational system. It's the people and it's what we're doing, right? Not what I'm doing, but what our
What you're doing is
superintendent and
helpful.
and our educators are doing, right? But is there opportunity, right? Is there opportunity that makes sense for the town, right? Again, I'm not a proponent of a building sitting there not being used and paying for it, right? My own personal opinion, but that's where I am. I don't know if anybody else has any other thoughts on that.
I think it'd be helpful if we get the public's input on this as well, because I know from what I hear, it wasn't really the case last time. Perhaps sentiment has changed a little bit since this recent budget season, so it'd be good to get their info as well.
It's hard to get the public involved when you have 150 people that show up to vote on a major issue. So it doesn't matter how much you put it out there, you get 150 people to vote. If we get lucky tonight, we'll get 150 people. So
At
we
least
have
yeah.
tried to get the public's input many times. It's just, like I said, when you get 150 people to go out and vote on a major issue, it just shows that people aren't engaged.
Right.
I think there's, I mean, to your point, Eric, there are clear lessons learned that the town has from the last 10 years ago. Transparency in the process as well, though, right? And I think we solicit public input through the process. I would imagine is going to be one of the things that would come out of a task force, if I was to guess, in that transparency in what we're doing is very important.
Tim, I think that we have to move forward with the task force. Because I don't see, I mean, we're going to be right back. I feel like I've been on, I don't know how many years I've been on the board. How many years have I been on the board? 5? 4?
I'm on 8 years.
We're going to be on the same, we're going to be in the exact same position again next year. You're kind of going to come back with an 8 or 9% increase in the budget. We're going to tell you to go back to the drawing board. We're going to have to cut. I mean, it's the elephant in the room. We can't afford what we have. We can't. Nobody wants to cut people. Nobody wants to cut resources. I keep saying this. We don't have the money. We cannot keep going back to the taxpayers for the money. So either we figure out a task force, figure out what it's going to look like to bring in somebody to figure out what we need to do. We come up with some kind of amazing fundraising plan. I know it hasn't been done in the schools before. We figure out how much money we need for the next 3 to 5 years, and we start campaigning, just like an annual campaign. We have to think of ourselves maybe like a nonprofit. We have an annual campaign. We have Giving Tuesday. We have to raise $2 million for the next 5 years. We never have these conversations. We talk about it, but we never do anything about it. We never figure out how we can get the PTO or the PTA engaged in taking over some of these expenses that should be with the PTA or PTO. Like some of the band stuff, the trip to White Memorial, like all the stuff that I talked about in the budget. Stuff like that, we get creative. How can we get them engaged? How can we help them fundraise? But what we're doing is not working. It's not working. The cost of special ed is going to go up again next year. Transportation, teacher salaries, teachers benefit, all that other stuff. It's all going to be the same problem we have next year, as it has been for the last 4 years. So I moved, if we have to, are we making motions tonight? We need a subcommittee. We need a committee of all the different players in town to start having an active conversation about that.
I would propose to you, instead of a motion, let Jeff and I
Have a conversation.
open discussions with the board chairs, Board of Finance and Board Selectmen, and bring it to them about, again, exploring options and strategy, right? And see what their feedback, and we can report back at our next meeting.
Jeff, what resources do we have through CABE and through Advance and whatever in terms of consultants to help with this? That might be less expensive than, or a grant potentially that we could.
Yeah, CABE has connections with the NASDAQ, which is a
Yeah.
reporting system in New England that
Yeah.
helps school systems make determinations such as
Right.
this, such as space utilization reports, consolidation, closure of schools via CABE and via the NASDAQ. For Ed Advance, they also have individuals that have worked within our region for a long time, have expertise, and I would certainly talk to Jonathan Costa about further exploring options with him as well.
And are there grants available for this type of stuff?
That I don't know, but I will explore everything and ask everybody, as I've done with everything else.
Do we have an idea of what that would cost?
A space utilization report would
Or like a
probably,
consultant, are we talking about the consultant to come in and tell us how we use the space? Or
Yeah,
if we close a school? don't
I'm going to
close a school?
guess, depending on, they're going to probably base it on our size and our enrollment is what they typically would do. I don't even have a guesstimate. I know the space utilization report alone is $5,000 to $10,000. The consultant to, depending on how often they're going to attend Board of Education meetings, community meetings, do a feasibility assessment, could range 50,000 or more, is
And
what I
is
would
that
guess.
shared with the town?
I don't know that
Oh, we
answer
don't- we
until
wouldn't
we
know that
start,
until you start
when
the
we have
conversation.
conversations and it's a mutual benefit across, then I'm hoping then the answer would be yes, but I don't know that answer yet. It's speculative at best.
We don't have the money in our budget to do that, so it
Right.
would have to come from another source, right? We won't be able to make it through the 25-26 school year.
So at the town meeting, most of the people who spoke that night were in favor of increasing the budget, right? And then the Board of Finance went the opposite way. So everyone here is just assuming that the town can't take this anymore. We got to do something. That wasn't the sentiment. I don't want any higher taxes, but some people are willing to pay higher taxes to maintain 3 schools. That was obvious the last time. We have 200 people go out and vote for this budget tonight, 250 maybe. When they tried to close the school, 1,500 people showed up to vote. 1,275 said, keep it open. So,
How many people are in, so we had 50 people that said we don't want our taxes raised.
I'm
We had
just saying
50
that
people said
we're
we
sitting
don't.
here all jumping up and down that we can't do this anymore. Yeah, but the majority of people are like, no, we can do that. We want to have a good educational system. We're willing to pay.
But that was 100, that was 50 people. There wasn't 6,000 people.
No, it wasn't.
How many people?
But you're not going to get 6. There's 7,000 people in this town.
The
Of
majority
people who
the
vote,
people-
there's like what, 3,200 people who vote in this town?
But the majority to me, 50 people for and 50 people against is not a majority.
If 50 people vote for something, 4 people vote for against it, 50 people win. That's how it works. Just because not everyone showed up. Oh, we don't know what they wanted. If they wanted it, they would have showed up.
One thing that.
I mean, I understand.
Go through this nonsense.
I understand what you're saying, but like per the discussion that happened, what really spurred me for this was the discussion in the last meeting, which I know that you were upset about too, where it was like the Board of Finance said we have to submit this budget. And like the direct question from us to you was, do we have any options? And the answer was no.
We can
So
go out and vote against it.
we can go out and vote against it, which was there, but
Wait and see at 8 o'clock when the polls close.
That's true. I understand all that. But even if the town says no, we don't know what the Board of Finances is in control of the process from here. We don't know what they're going to put back in front of the town if the town says no. We don't know what that means for our budget if that says no. Like, we don't have any control over that. And just because people showed up this year doesn't mean they're going to show up next year or the year after that or the year after that or the year after that. And in the meantime, we're still making cuts from what like the original proposal are for the budget is every year. So I'm uncomfortable not doing anything within our control. And if we do this work and we go through this study and we like do the due diligence and we say, it is not cost effective for us to like make any changes here, then at least we've done the work. We have made the assessment here and we have a stronger ground to stand on with the Board of Finance that yes, we did actually explore all of these avenues and like, this is not possible. That's the way that I see this playing out. We need to do the work.
I want to address something in the media that you just brought up, though. I think there are going to be people that vote against this budget because they think it's too low.
Exactly.
And
Good point.
a couple of people I told that communicated, and I want to be careful about what I said, but I said, if that's how you feel, you should send an email because that's not how it gets read. If you vote against a budget, people assume that it's because it's too high. I think I was at that meeting you're talking about, and there was a big turnout. And I think a lot of those people will vote against this budget because they think we cut too much. Not we, the Board of Finance, cut too much from the education budget. And that concerns me a little. And I guess one of my questions is, do they ever put an informed question on there? Like, did you vote against the budget because it's too low or it's too high? Does that ever happen?
Not that I've seen.
It would be a good idea for them to know, because I am concerned just from talking to people that people are going to vote against this budget because of the position cuts. And I don't know what the Board of Finance will do with that without that. What do you call that on a ballot when you, an advisory question or something like that?
And we've done those in the past for purposes of like the sewer, right? But not for why you voted for or against a budget.
Have you thought about that with this budget? Like what I just said?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Jeff,
And I don't know how you communicate that. I just
Well,
told
it
people, I
is-
said, well, however you vote, vote how you feel, but if you vote against it because it's too low, I would
I agree.
send
You have
an
to-
email.
You should voice your reason, right? Because we have to remove assumption if you made a decision, right? But again, I don't think that, what I'm talking about, with this task force isn't spending money, right? Because we can't spend money, right? It's not ours, right? I think we can have the conversations, right? We can have the discussions, kind of toss around ideas. Does it go anywhere? I don't know, right? The community needs to make that decision. Does it go anywhere? But
I want to add to that I think that, I guess I don't know what the legal ramifications of, I've asked this before, of fundraising. And if I'm assuming that a nonprofit arm of the school system foundation would have to be set up so that you could legally fundraise. The money would go to the foundation, but then fund all of these things that we're talking about. And if you raise, say, $1 million on the foundation side, could the $1 million be used to pay for teacher salaries? Could it be used to pay for White Memorial? I guess that's what I've asked that question a lot. Like, what do we need to do? And I'd like to explore that option. That we act as, maybe the school isn't a nonprofit, but we set up a foundation that is solely created, I don't know, whatever, for tax purposes, whatever you got to do. But the point of the fundraising is that all the money raised for the foundation solely goes back to the 3 schools. That's it. It goes to the salaries. It goes to shortfalls. It goes to the roof falls in and we don't have enough money. That's where that money is being fundraised for. And I'd like to see what the legalities are of something like that related to the schools.
Yeah, so you're already on the right track in terms of a 501c3 must be established. And then the monies that are raised should have purpose behind what they're raising exactly for. If you speak in general terms, it's probably not going to be as well fundraised, right? But if we're looking for specific project work, like the playground, for example, that's very targeted. If we're just talking about a foundation in general, then those monies can be transferred to a Board of Education. The Board of Education can then make those decisions in terms of where those monies will be applied. That's actually within our policy right now.
So we can set up a foundation and we can specify that the money would then be fundraised, gone to the Board of Ed. So then the Board of Ed could specify that we want it to pay for the the salaries.
It could be, yeah, at the discretion of the
So
Board of
that's
Education.
illegal. We're legally able to do that.
Mhm.
So why have we never done that in the past? Just asking.
Don't know that answer.
You guys have been on the board the longest. So I've asked it every year since I've been on the board, why we're not fundraising. Because to me, there are two options here. Close down a school because you have too many expenses. You can't continue this way. Or you start doing something alternatively and you start fundraising. And I know a lot of moms in town, they're the same ones that came to the board and they were talking. I mean, a lot of people are pissed. Those people would fundraise. And when you got pissed off moms and dads, they can do a lot of amazing things and you can raise a lot of money. So I don't know why we just don't start going down that path, irrespective of what this subcommittee, I mean, we're going to have a lot of people talking and we're going to keep talking and talking. Nothing's ever going to happen. So I don't know why we can't just start this now and start it and get it going and start coming up with a mission and start fundraising. Because if they're willing to pay for more taxes, then they're willing to give money to the foundation. They probably would give money to the foundation.
I can't spearhead that as your superintendent.
Well, I'll spearhead it.
Do you know what I
I'm
mean?
still on the
I'm
board.
not able to do that.
What do we have to do?
Can she do it? I like the idea.
She can talk to people in the community.
Am I allowed to as a board member?
Yeah, about an idea, but then someone else has to take it over. You
So
can't
somebody else
run
has-
it.
I
It can't be a
can't- I can't-
501c3 under your
But I
your
can't
name.
get the foundation started. We can't get the foundation started
You
as a
could
board.
meet with individuals within the community to start that legwork. And then they would have to apply for their own 501c3. You could be an advisor to it, but you're not directly leading it. You're not on their directors. You're not one of their chair people, that kind of thing.
Doesn't an organization like this sort of exist? What's
I know.
the New Hartford Education Fund?
Yeah, aren't they a 501c3?
I believe so, but I don't know that answer. I'm assuming it is,
But I
right?
think their mission would have
They're
to
nodding your
change.
head. It would have to because
The
it's
mission has
it's
to
much more
change.
limited
I'm
in
talking
scope.
about I don't want to spend money on anything else. I'm talking about a foundation solely created because we have to for purposes of whatever, is solely fundraising to focus on the need of not having to cut people. Solely focused on the need of, we need better food in the school systems. The roof falls in, specifically for our 3 schools, if we keep the 3 schools. That is what I'm talking about. I don't want to share the money and put it in the playground. I want it specifically for the things that we're talking about that we're cutting. It's our own foundation, separate from everybody else. If they're willing to change their mission and focus on fundraising to do what I'm talking about, then yeah, let's have a conversation. I don't know. Am I crazy? Is this a crazy idea?
I don't think you're crazy. I think that right now, again, the purpose of me opening up a discussion to have all options on the table and actually take some action against them. So everything from my perspective, I'm in support of anything being explored where anybody wants to put their energy and thinks that it's feasible. But I'm one person.
Well, I lost my mission of a security guard. So I guess I could take up the mission of this to help try to figure this out. But I feel like we have 2 options. We close stuff down, we get lean and mean, or we start fundraising to support the stuff that we have. Those are the 2 options. We don't need to sit here and discuss it for hours and hours and hours. You have too much stuff. You can't afford it.
What would closing the school in your eyes save?
I don't know. I need somebody to tell me, are we going to actually save money? We have 2 custodians, that's extra money. We have extra teachers, we have extra staff. I mean, in my mind, that's the way I'm thinking. We have a lot of extra stuff. And so if we closed it down, we wouldn't have that extra stuff, right?
You're again, I'm not trying to be condescending or disrespectful, but you're saying there's extra stuff. So you're not going to lose any teachers because you're going to have the same amount of students. There's going to be different
True,
locations.
that's right.
Right? So you're not cutting staff. Maybe you cut a custodian, maybe, right? The nurses already share time, so you're not saving on a nurse, right? So again, you add up all the money, right? So maybe you're saving, use a number from 10 years ago, $200,000, not a $10 million budget, and you're closing the school, and you're disrupting the community. It's not an answer.
All right,
It
you
wasn't
gave
an
me-
answer 10 years ago, and I don't see it being an answer this
Okay,
year.
so we
But
have to
again, I'm
fundraise.
willing to listen, but I just,
All right, well, then our other option is fundraising. So we don't close that, if that's what you're saying, and that makes sense to me, then the only other option you have, you do not have the money. There's no money. So we either have to start coming up with fundraising or something else if we're not shutting stuff down. But we keep talking about it year after year, and and then we come back with these massive budgets, and then we have to cut, and we all feel sick to our stomachs for 6 months while we sit here and work through a budget that we can't afford. And then everyone in the community's mad at us. And it's just like, let's just do something. Like, if we can't do that, then let's start fundraising for a nonprofit. Let's create it. Let's get it done. Let's get going. I don't know. That's just how I feel. Anyone?
Where do we want to go?
I'm wondering if we should table this until we find out what the results are for the budget tonight.
And what happens if the referendum doesn't pass tonight? Now what? Then we're back to the table with us trying to cut more things, or? what do we
Goes
do?
back to Board of Finance, then Board of Finance provides additional direction. It goes back to referendum.
Okay, can we make a motion to start the process of a foundation? Do we do that or no? What do we do?
I
I
don't think
think
we can.
everything is on the table. I would propose versus like the immediate action on the foundation, I would propose better a like subcommittee that is focused on identifying like the highest confidence options for either increasing revenue or decreasing operating costs. And again, it's going through those four, like basically the four things that have been sort of talked about. It's additional revenue from fundraising, it's closing a school, it's discussing, which we haven't gotten into a whole lot tonight, like the possibility of like if there's cost savings from regionalizing everything, which is whatever, and then actually going again back through the existing budget right now and taking a really hard look at like roles and responsibilities, everything that's going into the operating things, and figuring out what we can streamline over the next couple of years to keep this part of the pie not growing, so that we can protect the services and staff that are supporting the students.
And you don't need a motion to investigate that. You can start looking into it, find out other schools that do it, research the legality of it and all that kind of stuff. So the thing you were talking about making a motion for, I think you can go ahead and do, right?
Well, I don't think it's, I honestly,
investigate
I don't
it?
think it's in legal order to do that.
Yeah, I don't
because
think
we
you
have
can.
an
I just want to
answer.
make sure I'm doing what I'm.
As the Board of Ed.
Maybe you guys
I
need
can't.
to tell us and figure out the players in the room and who needs to talk.
I mean, for you to do your research though on
You
that,
can do
there's,
anything you want on your own, sure.
I would start that process of researching it, looking into it.
I just think fundraising too might be easier said than done. I mean, how long did it take to get money for the playground? Probably took months and months and months just to
A
get
good
75.
resource to talk to is Jessica. We did
Yeah.
that.
I just, I've never seen a fundraiser make $1 million before. Not a local one anyway.
The Mason Beakley Library.
Yeah.
Did it?
You absolutely can make $1 million. You can absolutely do it with the power of the right people in the room. Absolutely.
Isn't that what happened at Mason Beakley?
Yes,
Just a huge endowment.
Huge endowment.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Can be done if people care about it.
We can assign this next leg of work to the Long Range Planning Committee.
I don't know.
Look, I understand that everyone is like mentally exhausted at the idea of even fighting any of these battles. If people don't want to take action on this, I think that that's fine. I get it. And I understand that there's a lot of work ahead for anything else. We just sit here year after year and say the same things over and over again. And like we've been asking for, there's been input, there's been, what are we going to do to solve this problem? How are we going to protect the programs that we care about? How are we going to like do right by the town? And we don't have a good answer for that right now. We're just kind of like flying by the skin of our teeth every year. That's what I would like to hold ourselves accountable to. What's the
So
point of
was it-
being here? We're not going to try.
So is anybody on the board, does anybody object to Jeff and I opening up a conversation with with the other board chairs to talk about cost-saving options and strategies, right? At a minimum, to allow them to understand where we are, right? We have 7 people on a board of finance who are making the decision to cut our budget, right? Are they fully educated on our budget and what it takes to run these schools? Maybe at a minimum, it allows to educate them about that, as well as a 3-person board of selectmen, right? And we can have discussions. We can look at options, where they go, right? We need, again, community input before we do anything with them. We can't unilaterally make any decisions.
Well, then I will make a motion to have Tim and Jeff kick off discussions with other boards within the town to whether or not we should create a task force to reduce operational costs within the school.
We have a motion by Kristen. Anybody want to second that?
I
Second.
second it.
Second by Deirdre. Any further discussion on the motion that's on the floor? All right, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. All those opposed? All right, that motion passes. What do we got? Yes, 6-1, 0. All right, next item on the agenda is the educational specifications for New Hartford Elementary roof replacement. Superintendent Sousa.
Yep. So in your board packets, you should have received the educational specs. This is part of the process with all of the documentation that we have to submit to apply for the grant at the state level through the DAS. Colliers is our rep that is working with us, and additional report out to the Board of Education is that we've awarded the architectural contract to Hibbert and Rosa of Middletown. So they will be working together to put together our package that we will sit and meet with the state and submit, take feedback, make any corrective actions there for the roof replacement at New Hartford Elementary School. The intention of the educational specs is, just as listed here, it is the project overall project. That's what it's looking at, and how it does not impact the daily operating budget. That's the basic premise of this document, to say that operational costs are not being taken away from to fund this project. In fact, it has to be a completely separate source, general fund, tagged in the town's journals for this particular project, whether it's bonded, whether it's reserves or whatever else it may be used, but it's not a Board of Education budget reduction to make a roof replacement occur. So that's the intention of this. This does need a motion. It does need to be passed at the Board of Education for then myself and Colliers to submit to the state of Connecticut as one of our criteria to apply and apply for the reimbursement of the roof replacement at New Hartford Elementary School.
Can I get a motion to approve the educational specifications for the roof replacement summer 2025 form SCG-1030?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Eric. Can we get a second? Second by Kristen. Is there any discussion or questions on this?
I have a question on the number 7 construction bonus request. It looks like it might have been like a template on here, but it looks like it says we do not house any special program eligible for a school construction bonus, but then it says full day kindergarten not applicable. Don't we have full day kindergarten?
We do have full day kindergarten, and these are just items that are listed throughout. But due to the class size of our kindergarten, it doesn't apply for a bonus.
Gotcha.
Otherwise, it would have been labeled as a yes. So thank you
Okay.
for the question.
Okay,
Other items that are on here are not, they don't fit within it, or we didn't qualify for, otherwise it would be marked yes.
gotcha. Okay.
Just a formality under that same one. You should change Center Elementary School to New Hartford Elementary School.
Center Elementary School. Oh, number 7. Yep. That's part of the template. Okay, thank you. Number 8, it is correct. Yeah, New Hartford Elementary School. So number 7 needs to be updated. Okay, will do.
So the language in number 2, consideration of consolidation of elementary schools is being explored. Says who?
Consideration of consolidation of elementary schools is being explored because it was on the agenda to say that it's explored, it's being discussed. That is all.
Well, then it says this school would remain our primary.
If it were to, it's further justification that this school would be the one to last. If there's changes to that, then this no longer applies, would have to be amended and resubmitted, or like I stated before, penalized and grant has to go back. So there are other entanglements and ramifications to this if things change or go off course for the purpose of this particular building as a school building versus anything else that would be in town.
This, to me, this language is premature to what, everything we've talked about. Again, if it's a technicality, it's one thing, but
Yeah, I didn't see this
if we're
before.
exploring options to save money and all of a sudden, well, you know, let's close New Hartford instead, because Bakerville's got 3 times the students as New Hartford.
language even have to be in here?
Yeah. Can you
Um,
strike it out?
I can strike it. Yeah. So I will remove consideration of consolidation of our elementary schools being explored. And then the second, this school would remain our primary pre-K to second grade school. So I'll cross off both sentences.
Yeah, because we don't know that, right?
Done.
Any additional questions or comments? We're removing a clear story in this project?
I'm sorry?
We're removing a clear story in this project,
Yeah, there are two.
making sprinkler modifications in the
Yes,
building?
yeah, there would have to be. There are two clear areas over 2 restrooms, which are very conducive to leaks.
Are there any additional questions or comments? All right, all those in favor of approving the educational specifications with the amendments to item number 2, paragraph number 2, for those striking out those 2 sentences, as well as making the change to item number 7 from Center Elementary School to New Hartford Elementary. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. That is unanimous. Okay, next item on the agenda is reports at advance. Deirdre.
Okay. All right, well, we are struggling to figure out how we're going to keep our schools open. The positive coming out of at Advance is that they got a $1.165 million grant to provide electric vehicles and charging stations to support their special education transportation collaborative. They also won a $650K Connecticut DPH smoking and cannabis cessation training grant. So I guess that's the positive. On the other side, what we've been battling with is that they were just informed this last week that their federal student mental health grant has been canceled as of 12/31/25. As many of you may be aware, the grant provides social workers for 30 schools in the Northwest corner, including New Hartford and Bakerville. And the rationale for the cancellation is that the priorities of the program are no longer in alignment with the priorities of the current administration. And then they're going back and forth about it all and sending back a discussion with them to see if they can change that, but I don't think it's going to change. So those are basically the biggest things coming out of Ed Advance. Yeah.
The one other thing that I would like to add is that the superintendents in the Northwest corner are together advocating to reverse this decision with Ed Advance. So we're submitting supportive documentation and letters on behalf of all the boards of education in the Northwest corner.
Any questions?
Yes, when that grant funding expires at the end of the year and likely does not come back, what happens to the social worker services for us? Does Ed Advance still continually provide them no. So we have to, it's going to be a hit to our budget if we want to continue supporting those services.
Yes,
Yep.
that's correct. It's removed from the funding of a federal grant via Ed Advance's awardment of that grant.
Unless we, like we did, what we've done previously, we bring that on our Board of Education budget. We can't afford it.
Did they say why they're not aligned with the current administration?
Because there's language in there, well, again, I mean, Jeff, you would know, if you talked to everybody, but essentially speculation that there could potentially have been interpretation that there's DEI language in the grant that they submitted. That's his opinion, right? But that's just what he said. So I wasn't able to make the last board meeting, but I did talk to Jonathan. As Jeff said, they're all banding together to try to do a rebuttal on that to see if they can save it. But I mean, I think it's an issue that everybody's facing. That's all I've got.
Anything further? All right, moving on to public comment. This is for agenda items only. Would anybody like to address the board?
Hi, I'm Kathy Burl on East Cotton Hill Road. And one, I really appreciate how you're trying to problem solve because this is not an easy situation. And I do have comment when Mr. Rodenberg was talking about some of us probably going, not understanding the vote of no and yes, and no thinking globally people think it's too high. But if you were at the meeting where there were quite a few people, and we left that meeting with many positives, with the counselor being kept, White Memorial, all the things that were being kept. There are many people that didn't see the next minutes that said, due to 46 people sending letters, we are now reverting back to where we were. So I think that there were a lot of questions today by the few voters that went to vote. And I'm really sad because when I went to vote about 4:30, just down the road, only 150 people in this area voted, which is very sad. But anyways, so that was a comment that yes, there is misunderstanding on what that could have, what the purpose of that vote was. So that was my first question. My second question, and I don't know if I could address this or question this, when we were at that meeting, the funds utilized to retain those line items, the 120 from the bus, the 50 from the retired teacher, the 66 from the non-lapsing. The 66 from the non-lapsing, I sort of understand, but if there was money in that budget, and you can't speak for this, and I heard you actually saying we have to educate the Board of Finance maybe. I don't know legalities, but it was disheartening to know that the funds were there and they took those positions away. I'm just a layperson in town, I don't understand all that, but that is a really big question that when it was approved, why wasn't that set forth rather than having, why wasn't that set forth as the vote? Because then when people go to vote and they say, no, I don't approve, your brain, your mindset is actually saying it's too high. So there's a discrepancy among a lot of people that I chit-chatted with that didn't understand, what does this mean? So that was the second thing. And I get our town doesn't, I've been here 47 years. I've been through a lot with the town budgets and such. And I really, really don't know how to go about this, but since you're thinking of possibly closing one school, you know, you have a lot of different things out there on the table to think about. Since you're thinking, unfortunately, the political background might not be there right now, but so many other towns 5 years ago built big schools. What if we are actually going to go forth, possibly with a consultation company, to review everything? What's to say, believe me, I love Bakerville School, but I know a time comes when you have to face the reality of our 2 small schools, really 3. What's to not think about, since you're going to have a committee, possibly, of making a new Hartford campus up here on the hill, to take all the elementary kids, have Oak Hill. There are so many developers for the elderly. I'm just putting stuff out there, as I said, and just creating a campus for the young children up here on the hill. I don't know any monies, I don't know any of that, just throwing that out there. But, so those are my 3 questions. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
John Puz here, Trotwood Drive. First wanted to second what Mrs. Mangini said. Thanks to you all for everything you're doing. It's an incredibly thankless job, and truly appreciate everything you're doing to help our kids, our teachers and staff in our schools, and also the town, because we don't have unlimited dollars. I believe with public comment, you can't respond, so I was trying to, there were several of us who had a question, so I'm not sure if it's a factual clarification that you're allowed to do. But Jeff, when you said earlier, it sounded like if the budget passes today as it is, that there is no way to rework the budget to include or keep the instructional assistant and the clerical aide. Is that correct?
Correct.
No way.
None.
Then if it doesn't pass, there will be a chance to potentially rework. You're saying that too, like referendum were not passed, you could potentially do a rework. Okay.
Depending on what they do.
Yeah.
Don't know.
Door that, so it's closed. If the vote passes today, that topic is closed. If the vote does not pass today, the door is open in some way for potential discussion. Okay. Just as an observation, and this is where I'm new, and maybe it's an offline conversation. I know that we control, or you have influence over the local education budget, and there's a separate regional budget. As I'm sure you've seen the numbers, it's stark contrast to me being new to town. Regional from 2018-19 to present has gone from 1,093 students down to 750. The FTE count throughout the entire time has fluctuated between 135 and 137. So again, 1,093 is 750 and 135 throughout. And then meanwhile, we've been having to do with the same number of teachers or slightly less FTEs with this cut here. And so I don't know how to talk about the regional budget and put influence there, but it certainly seems there's a lot of dollars being spent and frankly, less cuts. I know it's kind of during the conversations about New Hartford doesn't have much of a say over the regional budget, but hopefully with us having more students there, we have more say, and you can work with your colleagues to be able to influence that. And then another point, as a factual clarification, was the motion that passed regarding the discussion, education, possible task force, strictly focused on cutting costs, or was it cutting costs and or increasing revenue?
Both.
Wide open. Great. There's many ways we
Go.
can potentially increase revenue, grants, tax dollars, et cetera. And then just wanted to second, Tim, your comment about educating and the discussion with the other boards about the budget and what's important to the schools. I think there's, just as you said, there's a lot of chit chat out there. A lot of taxpayers don't understand what is actually in the budget or not in the budget, what these different items mean. You have folks that are new, but folks have been here 40, 50 years don't understand. And so I'm not sure where the line is between you being able to educate the town and advocate in certain ways, and then where it makes partnership with PTO or other involved parents. But clearly there are folks that are confused and would hope that as we look ahead, not putting this all on you, hopefully that we can work together to make sure that as the next budget cycle comes up, we're able to make sure that we're able to educate voters and they're informed on what some of these items mean or they're voting on. So I'll pause there. Thank you for, again.
Thank you. Are you all okay if I respond to Kathy's question?
Yes.
Out of clarity? So Kathy, just so I understand your question, and again, I'm doing this because of the sensitivity of this budget vote that's tonight and the conversation, the questions that are out there. You had a question regarding the $66,000 that was removed from our budget.
And the 120 from the bus, you had allocated and came in 120.
So sequentially, what had happened was we proposed, the Board of Education had to propose, or we proposed a budget to the Board of Finance that include a list of eliminations from the budget. We heard the public community feedback. We had some discoveries between when we originally proposed our budget and when we came back to the table. We had the opportunity because we were able to, the discovery with the 120,000 from the bus contract, we were able to then remove some of the eliminations. In addition, as you said, there was a retirement that allowed us to remove some other eliminations. The board then as well has a surplus account that we control, which is legally something that, again, if we have a surplus at the end of the year, we can put up to 2% into a non-lapsing account. A non-lapsing account is, for all intents and purposes, a contingency. The town has their own contingency. The Board of Education had motioned to remove 66,000 of that to fund the two positions that the IA and the clerk. When we went back to Board of Finance, we had those all back in. The Board of Finance cut, and again, I think the confusion is it's always that number. That 66 number is what's sticking out to everybody. They cut $66,000. That 66, unfortunately, when we took the non-lapsing into there, was a true cut to the Board of Education budget by 122. We lost 66 of our contingency, and we lost $66,000. Right. Right. So that 66 that came in was used to, again, we can't use that for recurring cost. So it was applied to the volatility in special education cost. It allowed that number to be reduced in our budget, which allowed us to stay within the same percentage of having that 66 available. We reinstated those eliminations. When we went back to the Board of Finance, when they made that cut, again, unfortunately, that 66K number is still out there. That was the number. All right. So again, that in our superintendent and the administration, in looking at everything that's in our budget and the lean budget we have, those were the two eliminations that had to come back to the table. All right. So again, I wanted to do that for the reasons of, we can't respond to public comment, but I understand the sensitivity we are here. Yep. Would anybody else like to address the board? All right, seeing none, public comment is closed, and our next item is adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn at 8:34 p.m.? Motion by Deirdre, second by Frank. All those in favor? Thank you.